2026. Now, if you're an expat in Cyprus, you might be quite excited to find out that things have changed, and not for the worst. So the budget for 2026 was passed into law on the 22nd of December, um, 2025, so just in time for Christmas. So the news is still filtering away. It takes time to be implemented through the processes, updated online. And so by maybe the end of January, end of February, we start putting in those returns. But get prepared now if you're an existing Cyprus tax resident. And if you're not, listen to this video about why you should consider Cyprus as a tax location for an expat, for your assets and your business, or individually living and working abroad. So let's start off with a general resume about what tax is. Tax is charged on individual entities. That could be you as an individual, but not just you as an individual. It could be a company, it could be a family trust, it could be a family business, it could be a pension fund, it could be a property, it could be an ISA as an entity or shared portfolio. All those are individual tax entities, and they raise income or capital taxes or stamp duties, similar fixed rate taxes like that, or inheritance tax when you die. So what we do at ProAct for expats living and working abroad is we look at all those aspects to protect your income, your capital, and your inheritance across border and down generations, primarily with looking from a UK perspective, but throughout Europe and around the world, we can consider your situation from Singapore, Australia, Philippines, the Middle East, Dubai, or Central America. So if you got some interest in managing your assets, let us know. Contact us at proactpartnership.com. You can be an individual tax resident anywhere around the world, but still have a tax entity in Cyprus to manage your assets. So a trust, for example, or a company can own property or shares or businesses from around the world and give you some of the tax benefits of Cyprus. If you're an individual or based in Cyprus, then you individually can benefit from your pensions, from your overseas work as a digital nomad, or from property rental overseas. You can protect those assets in Cyprus. There's no capital gains or inheritance tax on assets in Cyprus other than real estate in Cyprus, but around the world, there's no inheritance tax, capital gains tax, so you don't get any additional taxes layered on top of what you've already got. So there's a big opportunity for you, even if you're not an individual tax resident in Cyprus, to own your assets in a low tax holding arrangement, be that a family trust, a business trust, or a Cyprus company. And so let's have a look how that's changed and what you're gonna have to do in Cyprus. The first big point about Cyprus is this year is that everybody that is self-employed or a business or a tax resident individually in Cyprus has to do a tax return in 26. Now, in the past, there's been a very grey area, and for 20 years at ProAct, we've recommended that you do a tax return anyway, because when you send property or assets in Cyprus or around the world, you potentially got a capital gains tax or an inheritance tax. By having those in uh, a Cyprus shelter, you can protect those assets from those taxes. So there's lots to consider. So first of all, everybody has to do a tax return in Cyprus, even if you're an individual. So if you become resident, or if you're resident in 2025, and you're aged over 25, you have to do a tax return. So that's the first thing. If you want help and advice on that, Product can help you do that Cyprus tax return. Contact us at productpartnership.com. If you own a property in Cyprus, you should have a tax number. In the old days, from long ago, you may not have that yet. But if you own a property and if you rent it out, either through Airbnb or privately, you've got a tax return obligation in Cyprus. If you run a business in Cyprus, it's the same. If you're British, you can't necessarily come to Cyprus to work because you need a work permit. So anybody from outside the EU needs to have a special permission to work, and that's not an automatic thing, but it can be done through companies or through remote working for an overseas company. If you want to find out how you can live and work in Cyprus without your automatic right of having a work permit, we can show you. It's very easy, and you can live and enjoy tax rates as an individual tax resident in Cyprus, working for your own business, but not as an employee in Cyprus. If that sounds complicated, contact us at productpartnership.com. What they've done in Cyprus is they've increased the personal allowances. So when you look at the UK budget, freezing allowances for nearly 5 years now. So they put up allowances. So if you're a tax resident in Cyprus, an individual can earn £20,000, €22,000 before they pay income tax. So that's a starting point. If you're running your own business and you've got dividends to come, as an expat, if you're not domiciled in Cyprus, that means you've not been a tax resident for more than 15 years, then you've got no income, no dividend tax, no interest tax to pay on those assets at all. Okay, so 20,000 income that you can earn without income tax, and then you've got no dividend tax and no interest tax on your savings above that. There's no capital gains tax. So if you've got a life, if you're investing through life insurance bonds, for example, there's no tax on those investments at all. Now, if you've got property rentals or earnings from overseas, then it comes down to remittance basis. Are you remitting the income into Cyprus? If you're not, remittance rules can still apply and mitigate some of your tax liabilities. Contact us to find out how that works. In Cyprus, you can be a tax resident for spending a little 60 days in the country. So if you're working in Africa or in another jurisdiction where you can get some potential benefits, but you want to be a tax resident or your family base in Cyprus, you can do that. And you only have to be in Cyprus 60 days a year. So you've got 10 months away working, you still be a Cyprus tax resident and enjoy 0% tax on dividends and assets. So you could have your own company, be working around the world, different jurisdictions, moving from here to there, but with a Cyprus individual tax base. You could have 3 months in Spain, 3 months in Mexico, 3 months in Dubai, 3 months in Singapore, and still be a Cyprus tax resident for the whole of the tax year. For more information and guidance on that, contact us at productpartnership.com. There's no capital taxes in Cyprus, so if you've got assets to dispose of, if you're selling a business or you're selling an asset that's not residential property, then you've got no capital gains tax in Cyprus. So if you've got a fixed capital gain on a property portfolio in the UK that you own individually, and you're a tax resident in Cyprus, and you in 25 and you sell that in 2026, you can defer the capital gains liability by remaining non-resident for 5 years and not pay any capital gains tax. So if you sell your property rental portfolio in the UK today as a UK resident, you've got up to 24% capital gains tax. As a Cyprus tax resident, there'd be no liability on that, but you could defer their payment in the UK by remaining non-resident for 5 years and pay no tax at all to the UK. But better still, you can start a plan for what if you die. Now we help you make a will. This is an important way to protect your assets. So a husband and wife or an individual can protect their business and property and investment assets across border, but also if anything happens to them, so it goes down to the generation. So by using a family trust and a family will, you can stay in control of your assets and then pass them on to the next generation for them to stay in control and and minimize the tax reporting you need to do in the event of that. So that asset planning also works very well inside from Cyprus because of the minimal capital gains and inheritance tax liabilities. You only got a capital gains liability in Cyprus if you buy Cyprus real estate and then sell it to a third party. Not if you're gifting it to your family, not if your family is inheriting it, only if you're selling it to a third party. So there's lots of top offshore tax planning that you can do in Cyprus. The highest rate of income tax, if you are an employee and you've got a lot of income coming in, the highest rate of income tax in Cyprus is 35%. So you've got a £20,000, €22,000 personal allowance. The maximum income tax rate is then 35% on earnings over £80,000. So that's £80,000, £70,000, €80,000. You're going to be paying 35% income tax. So if you're an employee, there's also a benefit to that. If you've got an employment in Cyprus, now to get that employment, you need to be an EU citizen to have that right, or you need to make that application through the various stages and steps to get that presentation. It can be done, but even so, there's other ways to be able to do that so that you can protect your income and not pay the 35%. Or it could be that 35% is lower than the highest rate of income tax that you pay in the UK or France or other European jurisdictions. For more information and guidance, you can contact us at projektpartnership.com. How to live and work in Cyprus, even if you're working for a remote employer as a digital nomad. If you do set up a Cyprus company, you do then have to have the management and the control of that company in Cyprus. So that is an extra expense. If your income is sufficient, it does work. So while you're earning over €80,000 as an individual, you've got a 35% income tax rate. If you set up a Cyprus company, your maximum corporation tax rate is going to be 15%, plus all your expenses can be offset against that. So your living and working and travel expenses are offset to reduce that down. And you're then going to pay a maximum 15% corporation tax. There is VAT and social insurance and audit costs to go with that. So there is a real cost and expense to that. But generally, once you're looking at income over £100,000, you can set up a personal service company in Cyprus and then enjoy a maximum tax rate on income of 35% after deducting all your business, living and working expenses abroad. Another subtle little tax break for people setting up a business in Cyprus is that from 2026, if you sell a business or sell shares in a business, you can receive 200,000 income tax free as a disposal. So that if you sell a business in a Cyprus company, there's potentially a capital gains liability on that. But now it's confirmed that you can receive up to 200,000 on disposal of a company and it'd be income tax free. So it's another reason to come along, set up a company, set up a business based in Cyprus. And if you've got some real tangible assets to sell, in that company and goodwill, then you can do that, and 200,000 tax free when you dispose of that company. All the more reason to pay to live and work abroad in Cyprus as a digital nomad, owning a property rental portfolio overseas, or working from a personal service company either in Cyprus or overseas. There are lots of different ways to be an expat living and working abroad from Cyprus, with increased personal allowances, um, lower tax rates, and frozen benefits. It's a really good base for you to live and work abroad. Uh, if you want to consider relocating to Cyprus or just being an expat from the UK, contact us at propartnership.com. Thanks a lot for listening. I'll see you next time.